Hello, I'm Tom Robertson, TIEMS Regional Director for North America. Welcome to Day 3 of the TIEMS 2022 Annual Conference, coming to you from Kennesaw State University in Marietta, Georgia, USA. Today we have a multifaceted program for you that I'm sure you'll be interested in. We're going to start out with a panel on the TIEMS International Certification activities, featuring some of our newly certified people under the program. That will be followed by a keynote presentation on the Federal Emergency Management Agency's extensive educational and training programs by Jeffrey Stern, who is with the FEMA Emergency Management Institute. After a break, we will be talking about a medical system that TIEMS has participated in assisting with, deployed to help Ukrainians' medical needs during the war. And then after a lunch, we will have a session devoted to a number of aspects of China's significant emergency management activities, followed by 2 papers dealing with technical and humanitarian aspects of the response to the emergency situation in Ukraine. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Harold Drager, President of TIEMS, who will be chairing our initial panel on the TIEMS International Certification activities. Over to you, Harold.
Thank you, Tom. Then we are back and we have another panel today. I hope everybody is fine all around the world. We know we just got the greetings from the Philippines, evening in the Philippines. So put something in the chat where you are and send us some greetings. We know you're listening in. From that, I will start sharing my slides. I only have 2. So it's simple today. Yeah, what we will talk about today, I gave you an overview yesterday of the research project TIEMS are involved in, but we are doing one which we found ourselves, and this is the TIEMS International Certifications, which we call TQC and TQAC. You will soon get a full understanding of what is behind these acronyms. And we are very proud of this, and we launched it in 2020, and we will tell you about it. And we have a program like this. First of all, we will have a presentation, a video, which tells about how this process goes on and what you have to do to be certified. After that, we will ask 6 certified candidates who will tell about their experience, how did they think about the process, and what do they think this can benefit for their own career, and how can they give us feedback if we need to improve this certification, do other things and development. Those are Russell Dippy from Australia. It's very early, very late for him. Yosuke Okita from Japan, a little less late. Vinod Menon from India, again less late. Neil Momani from Dubai, and Emma Chapman from South Africa, and Larry Porter from USA. Emma Chapman, she is the first that has taken the TQAC. The other 5 has all been TQC certified. After this, the examination is the last phase of being certified. So we have there partnered with a company called Proctor-Free, and we have Mike Murphy from Proctor-Free who will tell about their system, which monitor the examination. It worked very well for us, and I also like to say very much thank you to Mike for being a sponsor for this TIEMS annual conference. At the end, save your questions and put them in the QA on the Zoom, and we can have an open discussion on if you have anything to say on this. With this introduction, I like to start the video. I hope this works. If it's not, I'm sure that Kyle and Victoria, who's behind every technical things we do on this, they will help out. Then I start the video.
With an increasing number of disasters worldwide, resulting in more international collaboration and support to disaster-stricken areas, the need for more education and training in international emergency and disaster management seems evident. TIEMS believes that it is important to raise awareness of the competencies needed in emergency and disaster management and to support those participating in these activities and operations in acquiring those competencies. This is TIEMS' motivation for launching the TIEMS International Certifications, the TQC and TQAC, which is presented in the following slides. The TQC is the TIEMS Qualification Certification, and the TQAC is the TIEMS Qualification Associate Certification. Details can be found on the webpage listed on the slide. The idea of a TIEMS International Certification emerged during the TIEMS 2006 annual conference in Korea, and since then, around 300 experts from more than 40 countries have, over time, been consulted during the certification development process by answering a questionnaire and participating in workshops in Kiev, Manila, and Seoul. 8 test candidates from 7 countries, including Australia, China, Jordan, Nigeria, South Africa, India, and the US, have tested the certification from A to Z, giving valuable feedback on the quality, operational aspects, and relevance of TQC, thus guiding teams to attune the TQC certification to the needs of the international emergency management and disaster response community. When the TQC certification was launched in 2020, TIEMS was soon approached by newly educated professionals who had proper education but were lacking practical experience in emergency management. It was then established an additional TIEMS certification, that is the TQAC, for those with proper education in emergency management but who were lacking practical experience. TIEMS International Certifications are for experts who are orienting themselves towards international crisis and emergency management. TQC is a certification for individual emergency managers with a nationally recognized professional certification or other individuals with documented competence and experience, practical or academic, in international emergency and disaster management. TQAC certification is for individuals with proper education in emergency management but who are lacking the practical experience required for the TQC. Both TQC and TQAC only certify knowledge and competencies about international standards, requirements, and best practices necessary to create an international common understanding among those who work internationally with emergency and disaster management programs. The certification process consists of 4 steps which are performed online, including the application, compliance, examination, and evaluation, as well as awarding the certification. These steps will be described more in detail in the following slides. To be eligible to take the TQC exam, a candidate should provide evidence of the following: education, 1 or more of the following: a bachelor's degree or a minimum of 50 hours of emergency or disaster management training in the last 5 years, or a certification related to emergency or disaster management at the national level. Participation. The candidate is required to have at least 3 years' experience as a first responder, volunteer, educator, leader, or other activity, practical or academic, directly involved with emergency and disaster management in the last 6 years. Contribution. 1 or more of the following: at least 5 publications or speaking engagements in emergency or disaster management, or participation as a leader or board member of an organization that participates in emergency or disaster management, or teaching emergency or disaster management. And competence. The candidate is required to show having competence, experience, or education in 7 areas of emergency and disaster management. Those include international perspectives, preparedness, prevention and mitigation, predictions and early warning, emergency operations, public warning, search and rescue, and recovery and reconstruction. The candidate should read and follow the certification code of conduct during the certification process as well. To be eligible to take the TQAC exam, a candidate should provide evidence of the following: in education, 1 or more of the following: a bachelor's degree or minimum of 50 hours of emergency and disaster management training in the last 5 years, or a certification related to emergency or disaster management at the national level. In competence, the candidate is required to show having competence, experience, or education in at least 3 of the 7 areas of emergency and disaster management as shown for the TQC according to their choice. And the candidate should, of course, read and follow the Code of Conduct for TQC during the certification process. The TQC and TQAC application form link is found on the TIEMS website and consists of the application header plus 4 sections. The first section is the application form header, and this is where the applicant selects the type of application and must confirm having read and understood the code of conduct and this brief introduction before starting the application. The next section is the general section, which must be filled in with the personal data for all 3 types of applications. Then there are 3 types of applications in the form itself. The TQC and TQAC application section, which must be filled in with the applicant's education, experience, and motivation for the certification. If you are upgrading from TQAC to TQC, this must be filled in with the applicant's education, training, and experience since the TQAC certification. And then there's the TQC recertification section, which must be filled in with the applicant's education, training, and experience since achieving the original certification. Recertification periods last for 3 years. The applicant certification process and performance is evaluated, monitored, and approved by 3 boards. The certification board, which checks the application and approves his or her certification as a candidate, and then approve the candidate as certified and issue a TQC or TQAC diploma to the candidate. Compliance board checks if the candidate's documentation is compliant according to the requirements, and then an examination board, which checks the candidate's examination results. The required documentation for a TQC certification includes a CV, copies of degrees, diplomas, certificates, course completions, and any other certifications related to emergency disaster management, and then evidence of publications, presentations, teaching or leadership, and of course, professional references, and any additional background and experience that you feel is helpful for your application. A competence area summary demonstrating knowledge and the 7 competency areas is also required. For the TQAC certification, there are still requirements, and those include the curriculum vitae or CV, copies of degrees, diplomas, certificates, or course completions, as well as copies of certifications related to emergency and disaster management, professional references, background and experience, and of course a competence area summary demonstrating knowledge in at least 3 of the 7 competency areas. The whole certification process is performed online. When the candidate is approved for starting the certification, the candidate gets access to the online platform. Documentation will then be uploaded to the candidate's storage space on the platform itself, and when found compliant, the candidate completes the exam online. The boards will have access to the platform and can thus evaluate the candidate's documentation and examination performance. The overall goal of the TIEMS Academy, or the online learning platform for TIEMS, is that the certification platform shall be an online portal that will make emergency management educational resources from TIEMS and reputable educational institutions and initiatives broadly available worldwide. Today, the TIEMS Academy contains the following types of information: TIEMS educational material in the forms of programs and proceedings, TIEMS own developed courses, and courses provided by the TIEMS International Education Network, and links provided to relevant international teaching materials for TIEMS international certifications. TIEMS encourages candidates to gain exposure to the many aspects that comprise the emergency management field. The certification platform with the TIEMS Academy therefore provides references to the most important areas. During the certification compliance process, the candidate must demonstrate areas and knowledge in 7 of the TQC or 3 of the TQAC competence areas by delivering a competence areas summary. However, for the certification examination, the focus is on 4 important international areas on which the certification candidate will be tested in a proctored closed book examination process: international perspectives, the Sendai framework, ISO standards, and INSRAG framework. Understanding that TIEMS appeals to an international audience, the TQC and TQAC exam is monitored and delivered through Proctor-Free platform. In this case, with the Proctor-Free platform, picture identification is required for the applicant, and then each of the 4 exams and quizzes has a time limit, and the candidate will have to stay at his or her computer, and they will not be allowed to change screens or look away or leave the computer during the actual exam itself. And in this slide, you can see an example of the TQC certification diploma, and this is an example of the TQAC certification diploma. The TQC certified members are those who have fulfilled all of the TQC certification requirements by passing through all phases of the certification process. The TQC charter members are the first 8 candidates who tested out the platform, and they are listed here on the presentation. In terms of the recertification requirements, the TQC is awarded for a 3-year period, and recertification efforts are required before the end of the 3rd year. You must submit the recertification form, and then the boards evaluate the certified person's experience, activity, and education and training over the last 3 years. and then the board will recommend issuing a recertification or require that the candidate retakes the exam. The TQC charter members are presented here, and if you would like to hear their views or see their views on the TQC certification process and the value added, you can read that in the special issue of the TIEMS newsletter found on the TIEMS website. Since launching the TIEMS International Certification, a total of 15 candidates from 9 countries are already certified or undergoing the certification process. The last TQC certification was with Yosuke Okita from Japan, and he is presented in this slide with his view of the TQC certification. There are currently 3 candidates from South Africa who are in the process to achieving their TQAC certification. The TQAC certification is a one-time award showing proper education in emergency management, but it can always be upgraded to the TQC certification when the candidate has achieved the necessary practical experience in emergency management. The candidate would then submit a certification upgrade application using the TQC form, and then their portfolio and their experience would be evaluated, and if they fulfilled the TQC requirements, they would be awarded the new certification. This slide shows the steps and the timeline for the certification process. A paid TIEMS membership is required before a candidate's application will be evaluated. When an application is approved, the candidate gets access to the certification platform and can start uploading the required documentation. This must be done within 6 months. The documentation will be evaluated by the compliance board when the certification fee is paid. When the candidate is found compliant, they will have 3 months to finalize the examination. Access to the 4 examination courses will be given to the candidate on the platform when the examination fee is paid. If the candidate fails the examination, they will be able to retake the exam within 3 months at no cost. The max certification period and process is 12 months. As mentioned in the previous slide, all applicants are required to be TIEMS members, and here you can see the overall membership fees. As mentioned previously, there are fees required for the certification process, and here you will find the certification fee, upgrade fees, and the recertification fees. It's worth noting that during the year 2022, TIEMS is offering a 50% discount on the above certifications and examination fees, and TIEMS members from transition economies can apply for the TIEMS Certification Scholarship, which will cover the application fee and 50% of the examination fee for qualified applicants. You can start your TQC or TQAC certification today by simply becoming a TIEMS member, reviewing the requirements and prerequisites, and then completing your application form. Within 7 days, you'll be receiving a username and password to be able to log in to the online platform, and then, of course, pay your fees and start uploading your documentation to the TQC and TQAC platform. If you have any questions or if you need more information about the TQC or TQAC certification process with TIEMS, please reach out to any one of the members on this slide. And thank you for your time and watching this presentation, and we hope to see you in the TIEMS community soon.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. That was, I saw that we are got a little bit, things happen all the time, so we will, during this next step of this, update some of the information was presented in the video because things happen every day. But now I have the pleasure to listen to those who are certified, and they are our best ambassadors. So how is time in Adelaide, Russell? And how's the weather? You are getting into summer while we are getting into winter.
Good evening, everybody from Adelaide, South Australia. Currently it's 11:30 at night. It's still 21 degrees outside and dry in this part of the country, but other parts of Australia are currently suffering some fairly substantial flood events. Just by way of introduction, I saw an interesting graphic to put a comparison on. So although Kyle had a nice little map of the world and Australia was sitting there down in the bottom corner, it was pointed out that the east coast of Australia to the west coast of Australia, for our European friends, is the same distance as London to Moscow. However, we only have 7 states in between. So with those 7 states, we predominantly have one fire service in each state for metropolitan areas, one fire service in each state for country areas, one police service for each state, plus one national police service. Emergency management in Australia is very much delivered by emergency service agencies, not necessarily dedicated emergency management agencies And that leads to some confusion across the agencies as to the separation of incident management and emergency management. I'm lucky in that I am a police officer in South Australia, but my role is more than just incident management. It's very much the emergency management role. We don't in Australia have any sort of emergency management certification program. We have a limited incident management program that is aimed at fire officers, but there is nothing aimed at the multi-agency, broader emergency management community. So there is a lot of discussion around how we professionalise emergency management, and TQC is one of only 2 international models that have actually been taken up by some Australian emergency managers. Unfortunately, both models don't have a large take-up at this point. But at the end of the day, somebody has to be first. Somebody's got to be second. After a period of time, third, fourth, fifth will actually start to join in as they see the benefit. Harold's asked that I speak about the process. I must admit the process was very rigorous. Spending a lot of time sitting in front of the camera with the proctor exam process at the end was quite interesting from somebody who had never done an online proctored exam. But it did mean that I took it at a time that suited me. For me, I did all my online exams on a Sunday afternoon. That suited me. The proctor was somewhere in the United States, probably in the middle of the night running the system, but it worked, and it worked smoothly. The process of putting up all of the evidence that I needed to do was hard. There was a lot of stuff I had to go and find and dig out and get the evidence for. But funnily enough, I've now got it. I've now actually got the ability to prove to anybody that wants to know that I can do what I say I can do, that there is some rigor to my qualifications and certification. I think there is a distinct opportunity, not just in Australia, but across the world, to professionalise emergency management. But that is going to take emergency managers undertaking a leadership role in this area. They need to actually put their actions where their mouth is. They need to actually get on and seek those certifications, do the steps, and demonstrate by doing that there is value in proving their experience, their knowledge, their understanding, and moving forward with the professionalisation of our field of emergency management. Within Australia, there is the potential for probably thousands, 4,000 or 5,000 at least, people to be certified in the next 10 or 15 years. But we all need to work together to do that. It would be really good to see a system that is recognised worldwide. We have the CEM system that's available through IAEM in the US, but we only have 12 of them in Australia. We don't have a huge number of TQCs. I believe Larry Porter's on later on in this session. I think Larry and I are still the only 2 that have got both. So our challenge to you, join us. Get that certification. Prove that you are able to do what you're saying you're being able to do. The joys of multiple screens, which, by the way, when you try and do Proctor free, you've got to disconnect all your other screens because it wants to keep a close eye on you. Made it interesting, shutting them all down. So Grace has asked the TIEMS supply-demand strategy to ensure TIEMS certified members are relevant and needed in the field. I think, Grace, we probably need to reverse that question. I think as professionals in the field, we need to show our professionalism, our commitment to education and training and certification as a process. And we demonstrate that to the people that we've all signed up to serve by doing this. I don't think that it's a TIEMS delivered, TIEMS pushed product. I think it's, as an emergency manager, I think the emphasis and the onus is on us to seek this sort of certification and to push it forward as professionals, not as teams pushing it forward. I'd hate for it to be considered that this is a product that somebody is selling as compared to something that we as experts in our field think that we should be undertaking, if you understand what I'm saying there. Happy for any other questions. Otherwise, I'll be around for the rest of this session if anything comes up.
Please do, because we sum up later on and people might put more questions during this. Thank you, Russell, for all those words. And I think I listened carefully to what you're saying. I think you are completely right. This is something that the profession should drive. What we do, we are providers of something you can use. Thank you. And then I go further to India. Vinod Menon, how is India? What time is it? And have you, what is the weather? You are in Pune in India.
Hi, Harold. I am from India, but I'm right now in the US, in Maryland. So, we are in the EDT time zone. I'm very happy to be part of this very distinguished panel of experts who are TQC certified. And we also have Emma Chapman, who is a TQC certified person. So I'm sure that, this will be a very useful opportunity for us to share our views on TQC and TQAC, which are the International Emergency Management certifications from the International Emergency Management Society, headquartered in Oslo, registered in Brussels in Belgium. And, I find that this opportunity for participating in this TQC certification has been a very challenging opportunity, mainly because, we don't really have very many qualified and certified professionals in the humanitarian sector, even though many people are actually trained on the job. So we feel that this is necessary, that, we need to have an international emergency management certification. The others certification, which, Russell mentioned, is the CEM, which is a certified emergency manager from the International Association of Emergency Managers, IAEM. But I find that actually, we need much more opportunities for training for professionals, for education of professionals. And this participation in this TQC has been an opportunity in terms of learning and also providing the facilities for, sharing this information about TQC and TQAC to various professionals. So I thought that, this would be an opportunity for us to also share some of these, examples about, TQC and TQAC from various, various countries, because, we have professionals who have been certified, from different countries. And we feel that this will be something which we should actually be able to benefit from. So I will show a very brief presentation of 3 slides, which actually explain what TQC and TQC certification is about. I actually felt that, those of you who are actually watching this, presentation from different countries would also benefit from visiting the TIEMS website, TIEMS.info and TIEMS.org. This TQC and TQAC international certifications are for disaster management and emergency management professionals, first responder personnel from fire and emergency services, from the medical service professionals, doctors, nurses, emergency management technicians, and law enforcement personnel, police officers, uh, fire and emergency management personnel. And, we also have engineers, power, telecommunication, computer science, electronics, and psychiatrists, because we need many of them in the field because of the post-traumatic stress disorders and so on. We also need social work professionals and disaster management and environmental sciences faculty because of climate change. Researchers and students from different fields, these will also be very, very much relevant for, people from different disciplines. And why is this international certification necessary? That is because, we need to sharpen our toolkits and also strengthen the skill sets. We need to also widen the exposure to humanitarian assistance institutions and global frameworks like the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. And we need to be also aware of international institutions like the INSARAG, the International Search and Rescue Group. And we need to interact with veterans in the field of emergency management with practical experience and exposure. And we have to also become a part of the TIEMS network of emergency management professionals who are participating in this annual conference and also contributing to various webinars, podcasts, and others. We also need to understand the best practices of disaster preparedness and emergency response, because one of the basic bottom lines of emergency management is that anything can happen anytime, anywhere. And we also see that there are many emerging diseases, emerging threats like Ebola and Zika, and we had the monkeypox and several other new diseases which are emerging. We also need to be aware of disasters and also climate change induced hydrometeorological disasters and extreme events. We also have to benefit from the curated knowledge from conferences, webinars, and podcasts and all that which are on the TIEMS website. And also finally, a potential opportunity to participate in research and consulting projects through the TIEMS network. And in terms of the challenges, I think we have to really see that the unmet needs of humanitarian assistance workers and first responders has been felt during many of the mega disasters which has actually hit many parts of the world, including the recent COVID global pandemic. The most humanitarian assistance workers and first responders have to learn on the job when they are actually recruited for various humanitarian assistance response efforts. And formal education programs in emergency management are expensive and are also inconvenient for working professionals. And training programs in emergency management are very few compared to the need. And we find that TQC and TQAC international certification by TIEMS for aspiring candidates to a platform with a unique blend of professionalism, theory, and also practical exposure by veterans with decades of practical hands-on experience in policy formulation, multi-hazard preparedness, resilience building, emergency response, applied research, and consulting. The TIEMS annual conferences, webinars, and podcasts provide opportunities for deepening and widening knowledge, skills, and attitudes to be sought from emergency management professionals, to make them really sought-after professionals. And so I hope that this will encourage many more people to take the International Emergency Management Certification, TQAC and TQAC. As one of the people who have worked in the United Nations system and also in the apex body, the National Disaster Management Authority in the Government of India, I feel that we need to bring in much more opportunities for professionals to get trained and also certified in the field of emergency management. And we need to become much more professional because of the challenges are increasing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinod. Please stay in the panel because there might come questions and we have a little bit summary up later. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Then we go further to Yosuke Okita from Japan. But as far as I know, he stays in Hanoi in Vietnam at time being. So what time is it in Hanoi and what would you like to share with us?
Thank you very much. I want to share my slides. So again, my name is Yosuke Okita. I'm originally from Japan, but as Harald mentioned, I'm now in Hanoi, Vietnam. And so today I want to share my experience in the TQC process, which I went through in around May this year. So let me start from my background. So before the TQC process, I was certified in the Japanese similar system, which is called Kiki Kanrishi, which means the emergency manager in Japan, and Bousaishi, which means the disaster prevention officer in Japan. But of course, this is only in Japanese certification system. So I also wanted to be certified internationally. So that's why I find this TQC TIEMS qualification certification. And about my work experience, I used to work with the INSARAG Secretariat, International Search and Rescue Advisory Group Secretariat from the 2014 to 2017 within the UN OCHA. And also I worked for the Japan Disaster Relief Team between JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. This is Japan Disaster Relief Team has both rescue and medical teams. And since from 2018 to 21, I did my PhD study at the Keio University in Japan, and I wrote my PhD thesis on the topic of the classification system of international user teams, or INSARAG external classification, and its effect on the capacity building of user teams. And in addition, I also worked in JICA's Indonesia office and the Central Asia office as a staff in charge of disaster management projects. So considering my background and my work experience, I would say I had a very good understanding of INSARAG and the international perspectives or international cooperation and the disaster prevention, such as Sendai framework. But I was not very familiar with the ISO standards on risk and crisis management. Okay, Russell, thank you very much. Next slide, please. So considering that in order to prepare for the exam, I focused on studying the areas which I was not familiar with, which is the ISO standards on risk and crisis management. So I carefully read these documents. And I also revisited some important key documents, such as the Sendai framework. Of course, I knew this document, but I checked it again before the exam. And in the TQC exam, you have to answer about 10 essay questions. And this is just one tip. You can use your experience to answer these essay questions. So for example, you can talk about your country's disaster prevention system, if it's appropriate, and you can talk about your personal experience in the international response or like the technical cooperation projects. And you can show a good practice which you know or which can be beneficial to others or the TIEMS community. And another tip is that before the exam, you should get the latest or the most updated information. So I already told that I was with the INSARAG Secretariat from 2014 to 2017, and I was in charge of the revision of the INSARAG guideline version 2015. So I was very familiar with that version. But this year, I went through the TQC process this year, and the latest updated version of the INSARAG guidelines 2020 version. But I believed that I was a kind of expert of the INSARAG, so I didn't carefully look at this version as the latest version. So in the TQC exam, I had some problems, difficulty in answering some INSARAG related questions. So well, this is just one tip. Even if you are an expert or you are familiar with a particular topic, you should come back to that topic and find the latest or most updated information. And INSARAG guidelines is just one example. Okay, next slide, please. And in this slide, I want to show highlight some merits to go through the TQC and the TQAC process and some recommendations for the future. So as my example shows, through the TQC process, you can expand your knowledge of disaster and emergency management. So in my case, I was not very familiar with the ISO standards on risk and crisis management, but through the process, I could expand my knowledge on disaster and emergency management. And of course, as Vinod already mentioned, this TQC is a certification by an internationally renowned organization. And some recommendations for the future. The first one is that your feedback is really welcome. So after the TQC process, which I went through in May this year, I am now serving as the TQC examination committee member. And I believe that this TQAC is a learning process, as I said, but I'd say this is a mutual learning process. So not only the candidate side, but our side, the TIEMS and the TQC examination committee also learns from your feedback. So for example, some exam questions, we needed the feedback from experts in each field. So just an example, after the TQC exam, I provided some feedback on the INSARAC related questions. And the last point is that more awareness of TQC in each country is needed. So at this stage, I'd say no internationally recognized certification in disaster and emergency management there. Some may say that the CEM, Certified Emergency Manager, is one of it, but most of the certified emergency managers are from the United States. But this TQC, now we have 10 members from 8 countries, a variety of states. So I think this TQAC can be the first internationally recognized certification in disaster and emergency management. Okay, thank you very much. That's all. And back to Haraj.
Thank you, Yosuke, for that presentation. And please stay on so we can discuss after everybody has presented. We are then moving on to the Middle East, and we have with us Nail Momani from I think he is either in Saudi Arabia or Dubai at the moment. Please tell where you are and what time is it and what the temperature. And we will like to listen to your thoughts and experience on TQC certification. Floor is yours, Nail.
Hey, Harad, thanks for your introduction. It was very interesting to know TIEMS since more than 20 years during the first conference in Waterloo to 1999. Since then, when we always engaged in training, especially for civil defense and all related organizations within disaster management, they always ask, do we have a certificate? Do we have certification within this domain? Normally, when we do training, like through universities or through centers, we have certification from that university or that center. At that time, I know there was some certification in the US, but it's US-centric, is not international one. So during my engagement with the teams from conference to another conference, we always discuss this. We need to have an international certification. I was happy to be contacted to be as a test candidate among other 8 candidates to see how the process works, what we need to improve or to keep or remove within the certification system of TQC, TIQC. So at the end, we end up as also taking this certificate. It was very good experience for me. And I was happy also to share in MENA region. In fact, we did that training for some students in Saudi Arabia. They are professionals, like practitioners within emergency management domain, but they need international appreciation or certification because we don't have it in our region. Like we don't have the certification, non-certification within emergency management. So that's why when I approached them, they were very happy to do that. But in fact, when they went through the process, it was very difficult for them. It is not easy to get a certification, especially sometimes when you deal with another language. So I always encourage them, let us start. If we need to do it in other language, I'm sure teams will be more than happy to introduce it in Arabic or in other language if needed. So when we compare it with other certifications, for example, like project management or PMP for engineers, now when we see companies, they always, whenever they ask for project managers, they ask for BLB certification. If we consider like business continuity, they ask for DRI certification or business continuity institute certification. So that's why having a certification within emergency management or disaster management domain from TIEMS, I think it might be one of the best steps that TIEMS introduce to the professionals in this domain, and it will help to widen the practice to get everyone know what the, like for example, NCRH, search and rescue. Some professionals in within the emergency management domain, especially like coming from, not the practical aspect, not the international aspect, they don't know what NCRH is. Some of them, they don't know about ISO-related risk management components, for example. Some of them, they don't know about the EU Commission, what kind of standards or practices related to emergency management. When TIEMS introduced all these aspects, like ISO-related, NCRH, EU-related emergency management, so it became like international perspective of emergency management. So for me as practitioners, for example, civil defense in Jordan or UAE or Saudi Arabia, I am sure he will be more than happy to expand his knowledge to get the certificate. And I'm sure in future the certificate will be one of the best one in this domain, because during the past more than 20 years experience for me in this domain, I didn't encounter competitive one to TIEMS. And I would like to especially thank Harold for all his efforts in this domain and his love and engagement with the TIEMS since we met in Waterloo in 99 until today. And hopefully we will have you, Harold, again in MENA region in Saudi Arabia for another international conference for TIEMS in future. And I think that's for my side. The floor is yours, Harold.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for those nice words. It's been nice to know you, and I remember we met in Washington, and I know you also know Larry Porter, who I will now let on as the next one in US. We will wait with Emma to the end because she will tell a little bit more at TQAC. So
yes.
While Larry goes on, where you can upload, you can...
Harold,
yeah.
Just to let you know, two facts. Like Harold, he is my classmate. Since we met in Washington, DC, he's my classmate. And this Friday, I will move to my new work in Saudi Arabia and Ola to start, professional work in emergency management domain. After 20 years of academic experience, I decided I want to change. That's it.
Thank you, Neil. And that was a fantastic introduction of Larry. Larry, the floor is yours, and Victoria, take up Emma while Larry is presenting.
Thank you, Harold, and hello, Nail. We started the doctoral program at George Washington University together in around 2000. Nail was full-time. It took me 10 years. I would like to share my screen for a couple of slides. There's a little bit of my history. I had a background in National Guard duty with exposure to emergency management in some of my assignments. And when I got to Washington, D.C., my last assignment was the first National Guard liaison officer assigned to FEMA headquarters. That reminded me that I knew it was my last assignment. I was going to retire, and retiring too young to just kick up my feet and retire. So I found out about the program at George Washington University and began with a graduate certificate in emergency management and transitioned to a PhD program. One of my goals in finishing my military career and entering the emergency management field was becoming certified. And I was certified in 2006 and recertified twice. I'm now old enough and retired enough to have applied for a lifetime CEM. The work I've done over the years in emergency management has almost always been in education, beginning in about 2004, when the university in this town I was living in, Norwich University, found out about my pursuit of a PhD and asked if I would begin developing emergency management and business continuity content for their master's degree program. And I've worked with 5 institutions since then, course developing and teaching at the master's degree level. I heard about TIEMS over the years because my advisor, Jack Harold, was a former president of TIEMS, and he was frequently going off to TIEMS events. So I investigated and joined off and on over the years, and then recently joined again as I became interested in the TQC program. See if I can page down. Too many. So my focus in TIEMS and in TQC is to have people expand their knowledge of what international emergency management is. And that's different from country-centric, that it's things that if you're working internationally, such as in the United Nations or NATO, you're exposed to the way other countries do things. I have developed materials that I use in the TQC instruction about the breadth and the variations of international emergency management. I promote TQC as a non-country-centric program certification, rather than just the country or the state in the United States, for example, that you're living and working in. I promote education. I am the president of the Council for the Association of Emergency Management Education, Emergency Management and Homeland Security Education. And our group has established standards, minimum standards, and we assess programs at the college level, collegiate level, at the bachelor's and master's program to see that they meet our standards. Like TQC, it is a growing program and is still quite small. But I promote international emergency management education. I believe that every program teaching emergency management should include a component about the international environment. There are thousands of jobs in the international field in emergency management worldwide, and they go wanting because there are not enough trained people in international emergency management. Yes, frequently there is a language requirement, but the exposure to the international field is different from the country itself. I think we should market TIEMS membership, and especially TQC, to organizations like the United Nations, like NATO, the USAID, OFDA, Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, and more. That's the population that would be interested in an international certification. And that's my contact information. I'll leave it up for just a few seconds. High Point is the furniture capital of the world. We have a market for wholesale furniture buyers, and we get 70,000 visitors twice a year. But High Point University is well known throughout the world. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And please stay on for the debate at the end. And then we have the first TQAC certified. She was certified a couple of weeks ago, so we didn't actually have that already into the video, but we will update the video with that information. Let me now introduce Emma Chapman from South Africa. And what's the temperature and what's you are on Central European time, same as that? And how's the weather in South Africa? And the floor is yours, Emma.
Hello, everybody. South Africa, it's 3:30 in the afternoon here, and we have a really hot summer's day in Cape Town today. So I thought I would just start with a brief background where I come from. So I studied within the field of disaster risk management with a heavy focus on South Africa. Following this, I then went into working in disaster risk management at both a local and district municipal level within South Africa. So in doing this, I have a lot of background knowledge on the application of legislation, specifically South African disaster management legislation, which fueled both my honors and master's studies. So how TIEMS impacted me and why I kind of gave a brief background was so that you could kind of get a picture as to basically see that my background is very disaster management focused. It's also very much South African focused. So this TIEMS was almost like the next step. It really was internationally focused, and it also had a focus not just on disaster management, but emergency management. So through studying the contents that TIEMS provided, I was able to be provided with a much broader and a less isolated view of disaster and emergency management worldwide. So yeah, my impression of the certification, I am aware of our regional certification processes. In South Africa, we have DEMISA, so this is for Southern Africa, learning and certification in disaster management. Whereas TIEMS is, as I said earlier, a lot broader, more international. And yeah, I really feel that this is the next step for all countries. We know the recent events, the Ukraine war, the COVID pandemic that we had. There's such a call for international standards, certification, policy, common understanding among different countries worldwide. So I really felt that going into TIEMS, this was the step in the right direction that I needed to go into. I'm really excited to see what is to come within TIEMS. So yeah, that in brief is from me.
Thank you, Emma. And I think everybody has noticed that you are the first woman that has taken the certification. So you should be the ambassador for more women to get into TIEMS and also doing certification. And thank you very much for your words and telling about this. And we will continue. And please stay on the panel, because as you all have mentioned, the examination is actually the proof of the pudding that you really know the things we have put up. Sandro Bologna from Italy was actually the TIEMS member that, with voluntary work, put together the concept of the TQC. And we had many discussions with him on what should we test the different candidates in, because emergency management is absolutely everything in daily life. Whatever you do, you are faced with taking decisions which might have an impact on what you do and what your life, etc. And he, after some thinking, he came up and said, we are not able to test you in everything, but we can pick out 4 international important fields. And that's what he did. He picked out, as said by you, the international cooperation, the Sendai framework, the ISO standard, and the INSARAG framework. We have been discussing that this shouldn't be the end. So at the end of this presentation today, we will discuss a little bit, and I know Larry have some ideas where do we go further on that. But examination. I learned a new word when Sandro was working with this, and he said, how do we know and how can we test the candidates and knowing that they are not sitting with books and knowing everything? Because we decided there should be a closed book exam. They should not have any available means doing the exam. And he introduced me to the word proctoring. I had to go to Google and check what is proctoring. I didn't know. And then I was searching in the world on the Google, and I find some proctoring companies. I checked with one of them, but we also needed to use the Moodle platform, which was a limitation from those I contacted first. But there was a generous offer and said, please contact Proctor-Free. We know they have a solution which can go with the Moodle platform, which we have developed the concept on. And I'm so pleased to introduce Mike Murphy to tell what is proctoring and how do they do it. And as Russell said first, he thought that worked very well in Australia when he did the exam. Mike, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. So hopefully you all can hear me, see me, and see the slides that I have up. It's really neat to be on with so many folks internationally. And I recognize going near the end that I'm probably sitting in between some of your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, or maybe even the end of your day. So I'll keep this as brief as possible. So I'm the founder and CEO of Proctor-Free. We are a technology company based in North Carolina, so about 4 hours north of where I'm sitting now in Atlanta. And our mission is simply to be involved in the successful delivery of education. I'm a non-traditional learner. I consider myself a lifelong learner. And one of the things I really enjoy about working with organizations like TIEMS is it's very clear that you all are distinguished professionals, lifelong learners, and you take your work seriously, and your work is important. So it's an honor to be able to partner with TIEMS and just be one part of the learning and certification journey. And Harold, I can't thank you enough for being so easy to work with and inviting me here. So we have about 50 employees at Proctor-Free. We're spread all over the United States, from West Coast to East Coast. Occasionally we'll have an international employee or two. A little bit about my background. Prior to founding this company, I worked for a veteran-founded training provider. We became an accredited training provider, and we did live and online training all over the United States. And I actually had to proctor exams at times. I would go train people and proctor them. And this really opened my eyes to the need for a scalable and virtual proctoring solution. Sometimes I would be sitting in a room with, blue collar workers, and they were trying to take a proctored exam, and there wasn't really a concern that they were going to cheat on the assessment. But they were just literally struggling to log into the system. They didn't have email addresses. They didn't have computers. And that's not always the case. But when we do design our proctoring, we try to think about all different types of learners and test takers and candidates, because we serve a global client base. And prior to founding Proctor-Free, I was a Department of Defense employee. And prior to that, I was an intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army. And for about 6 years of my life, that was my focus. And about 3 years of that, I spent in the Middle East working as an intelligence analyst, and then later on forensic and biometric projects. So our company, the workflow is somewhat similar to Zoom from a test taker experience. There is an application that is launched on a machine. But what we try to do is meet the candidates where they are. So typically this means we are integrated with a learning management system or a test delivery engine, either via LTI integration or an API that we've developed. And in this case with TIEMS, using Moodle learning management system, we've had an integration with that platform for about 9 years now. We are very much on demand. There's no need to necessarily reach out to us and schedule in advance. And then when you launch our software, we're streaming audio, video, and screen captures to the cloud. And when I say the cloud, I'm referring to Amazon Web Services. So that all happens in real time. There's machine analysis that occurs, and then we have trained human auditors that look at different sections of these exams. And our goal is to provide a report back to our clients in 24 hours or less. We work with a variety of different types of organizations, colleges and universities. We see a common thread with nursing, medical staffing. There's been an emergence since the pandemic, specifically in corporate learning, training, and development. A lot of companies will be launching, certifications of excellence around their brand or their product. And of course, we've been working with TIEMS, and it's been a wonderful relationship. As far as the reporting that we provide back to our clients, we view ourselves as a data processor at our core. Our clients are the data controllers, and they authorize us and give us permission to interact with certain pieces of information. But what our clients get back is a full audio, video, and screen captures of the recording. That's all stored securely. Our clients get to determine how long this information is stored. We are a SOC 2 Type 1 compliant company. We take privacy and security of our platform infrastructure very seriously. Some of the benefits to proctoring, and this is really, when the pandemic started in 2020, I think a big tidal wave of interest hit the proctoring industry. Proctoring or invigilating, and invigilation as it's referred to in Europe, has been around for a long time. As you can imagine, it's kind of gone through different iterations where there might be a physical test center, associated with, perhaps a college or university, or folks will contract with providers that have physical space that can do in-person proctoring. But about 10 to 15 years ago, we started to see an emergence of call center model proctoring. And I think in another 5 to 10 years, automated and on-demand proctoring is going to be very common globally. If you think about individuals that are in high school or university today, I have children, they're digital natives. They're used to being able to do things virtually and on demand. So whether it's from a test administrator standpoint, and there's a logistical burden to proctor, or to proctor a large number of people at any given time, or there's a program that wants to grow. Some of our clients would historically have one annual conference, and that's when proctoring would occur. But by doing it in an asynchronous format, whether that's quarterly or monthly or truly on demand, it allows them to expand their member base, because sometimes it's inconvenient for members or folks that want to be a member or folks that want to achieve a certification, to be at a specific time and place. Integrity, credibility, test item security, and then most importantly, I think, is just compliance and an audit trail and having a digital receipt. A lot of our clients answer to a regulator or an accreditor or some sort of higher authority, and they really want to be able to demonstrate the rigor throughout the learning and certification process. One of the things we really focus on and I'm proudest of is our customer service. It's a novel concept, but we recognize that everyone has a different style, everyone has a different technical competence, and there is an element of test anxiety. So one of the things that fuels me in my company is when we get feedback from our clients that they're pleased with our customer service. So that's our goal. We have very high standards for that. So whether you're staff, faculty, test administrator, or test taker, we want to make sure you understand how to use our system and you have a positive experience with it. And then last but not least, this is my contact information. If anyone has any questions or wants to get in touch and talk about anything, education, technology, learning, or proctoring, I love this, and this is what I do all day, every day. So Harold and everyone out there around the world, thank you for having me. And it's an absolute honor and pleasure to work with TIEMS.
Thank you, Mike. And I just forgot to tell that also Proctor Free is our sponsor for this conference. So I'd like to thank you very much for that as well.
Our pleasure.
Thank you all. We have now heard from all over the world where we have candidates, and we hope to extend that because you are the ambassadors. And we have a QA here, so please, if you have questions like clarification, put that. And while we wait for more questions, I would like to challenge you, Larry. You have some ideas. Where do we go further? What would be our plans and ideas on development of TQC and TQAC? And the other candidates, please think about that, and I will have a round with you when we wait for eventual questions. Larry, floor is yours.
Well, I do have some ideas, and I have voiced them to Harold. And Harold has suggested that I reduce them to writing so they can be discussed wider. As I've said, the field, and has been said by others, the field of international emergency management is very, very wide. And how do you test that an individual is knowledgeable about a very, very wide field? We have 7 competence areas, and we are currently testing 4. I would like to expand. I have been working to expand the opportunity of testing for all 7, where the individual would choose the 4 that they wish to test on. That requires time and effort, and I've suggested that we contact the international group of experts, some 300-400 people associated with TIEMS that Harold has a communication with, that can offer suggestions on or become a subject matter expert on one of the competence areas, or perhaps even expand the competence areas. If we've got 12 competence areas that someone chooses 4 from, then that's even a wider depth of experience in the wide international emergency management field. That's about the gist of it.
Thank you, Larry. I saw Russell's picture. I would like to continue to go around with you because the idea is where do we take this further in order to meet the needs? Russell, would you like to say something about that?
I think in order to expand this project, we need to actually get the message out about it. How we do that, I'm not too sure. I'm actively sharing it with other cohort people around the place. You will have seen I've just put a journal article up where I've actually written on the two different systems that are available in Australia, being TQC and CEM, to try and build that understanding. But I think until professionals know that it's there, then we've built it. We've just got to now get them to come.
Okay, thank you.
Harold, I advocate that TIEMS hire or get a volunteer to be a marketing specialist for the organization, to contact organizations such as NATO and the United Nations and other international offices. There's a whole host of international non-government organizations that is the population of people that are interested in international emergency management. I have marketing ideas, but I'm not a true marketer. But there are people that are, and whether we can get volunteer to do that or to have to hire someone, I think it's important to focus on marketing and the expansion of what TQC is, what TQAC is, and what TIEMS itself is.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, Larry. And I've been doing this for 29 years, and next year we are 30, and we will have a celebration in South Africa. But reaching out, whenever I go, I meet people who haven't heard about TIEMS, and I do also my best, and everybody should. But I agree, we should maybe professionalize more on marketing. Vinod, you're on. Would you like to think forward what we do?
Yes, I think there is definitely, an increasing requirement for more and more professionals in the field of emergency management and climate change to be certified and professionally, acknowledged for their work which they've been doing. And so TQC and TQAC are both very much needed. I would strongly recommend that, we identify all the universities which are conducting programs in emergency management and also in climate change, environmental sciences, and then reach out to the faculty members and research students and also postgraduate students doing MS and, MSc in disaster management, emergency management, conflict studies, and so on. I think it will be a very good opportunity. And we need to also expand the membership base of TIEMS. And so now we have a new director for memberships, and so we will actually be in the board, and so we will actually be having this opportunity to interact within the board for bringing in more and more institutions and more professionals into the field of emergency management who are certified. And so I feel that with Proctor Free and the process, which is already established, we will actually be able to reach out to a wider audience. And make sure that this is actually available to countries around the world. We saw during COVID that there is this requirement for not only for emergency management professionals, but also for social workers, for psychologists, psychiatrists, and people from different fields, including civil society organizations and community-based organizations, elected representatives, and so on. So I'll be very happy to extend support in taking this forward. And Larry, very proudly, he is wearing the TQC pin. So if that can also be shown to everybody that, a TQC certified professional and TQAC certified professional will be displaying their TQC and TQAC pins in international forums. And I'm sure that that will be another opportunity to really create the curiosity among the professionals and first responders, from the police, from emergency management, fire and emergency services, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinod. Yes, we are in the process sending out to everybody, but we have to send them a long way. So it's on your way to Russell and to Yosuke. But I know that Yosuke, you are working on an article in Japan. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. And I checked the list of the certified members of certified emergency managers, which is CEM and the TQC. And of course, the TQC, I am the first certified member. And for the CEM, there is only one Japanese people certified. And one of the biggest reason why not so many Japanese people are certified is that they don't know about what the CEM and the TQC. So that's why what I'm doing is just to compare CEM, TQC, and the Japanese similar system, which I mentioned, Kikanrishi and the Bosaishi, which means emergency managers and the disaster preparation officer. And I wrote an article in Japanese because if I write an article in English, usually Japanese people will not read it. I wrote an article in Japanese and compare what the TQC, CEM, and the Japanese similar system. And I hope this will raise the awareness amongst the Japanese people about TQC.
Yeah, thank you, Yusuke. And I know that Japan is important because you have a long tradition in handling earthquakes. And we had our annual conference in Niigata, and that was quite interesting. And we know this culture difference. We have to be aware of that. We also had that workshop in Tokyo just the year before. So you are the best ambassador. But I will go further to Emma. Could you like to think something? How can we get in more women into this? We have the same problem. We did an election yesterday in the annual general meeting. Unfortunately, we have only one woman left now in our as officer, but we have no women in the board. So how can we get more women to take part in the emergency management field? Do you have any thoughts about that, Emma?
I think reaching out to regional disaster management societies would really assist. I think, when you share a little bit more about what disaster management is and what it needs to be at an international level, at these, we often have conferences once a year. I know DEMISA, for example, have one, but to share what TIEMS is all about on this kind of a platform, I think that would bring in a lot more people, inclusive of women from developing countries.
Thank you, Emma. And Neil, would you like to add something to this?
Yes, hi. For me, I believe that we can increase the scale of expanding the TQC, TRQC to wider community by introducing, for example, a book, unified book like the BB, to have a book. This one, edition 1, edition 2, edition 3. So at the end, so anyone want to take the exam, you need to read the book. All other certificates. I think this is very interesting. The other thing is the ability to introduce it in another language. Because for example, in Jordan, or in Saudi Arabia, they are professional, they have an experience, they have the knowledge, but sometimes the language. So if you are able to introduce it in another language, this also will expand the certificate widely. Because this is international certificate. It's not localized by country. So if there's a need to have it in another language, I think this will be an adding value and adding to the community. That's it.
Thank you, Neil. I would like to give the word to you, Mike, as your observation on these experts from all over the world. What do you think?
So I've had to market my company. We certainly have relationships with colleges and universities, and I'm happy to trade some ideas on how I think you can, gain more visibility. First thing I would do is start with short case studies. That's something that's worked well for us. Something that's sort of an infographic PDF designed, 1 to 3 pages, and you could even highlight specific candidate profiles. But I'm impressed with just the breadth of experience here and how serious this work is. And I think it is important to grow the certification.
Thank you, Mike. I would like to thank you all for all your participation. And I think this was a great session. It is taped, so we can also use this in promoting the certification. Thank you all, and I hand over to Tom as the chair of the day to tell us what we do now. Thank you all.
Thank you all, panelists, and thank you, Harold, for bringing together this group to talk about the TIEMS certification program. We are now heading into a break. Thank you.